everyone, and welcome back to the Live Open Forum. It is I, Captain Logan. It's a Wednesday afternoon, and that means, once again, it's time to chat with me for an entire hour. Thanks a bunch for being here if you're with me live, and thanks for clicking on this after the fact if you're doing that. How's everybody been? How's your week so far? I have had a pretty productive week. I've been working really hard on Superhero Rewind and getting the new podcast version of Superhero Rewind up and running. When I say version, I just mean getting them in a podcast so people can listen to them that way. There's nothing different or special about them really, but that's a thing that I have been working on, and unusually it kind of feels, I feel like it should be later in the week right now, and usually I feel kind of behind. Usually it's more like, oh man, it's already Thursday, it feels like it's Tuesday. But no, I keep thinking I'm a day ahead this week, so I'm feeling really good. I'm doing great. And once again, thanks a bunch for being here, folks. I want to thank, as always, my chat moderator, Danny Nixon, for helping me out. This marks a full month of Danny helping me with each episode, and super cool of him. I certainly don't expect him to do that every week, but so far he has managed it, and it's super cool of him, and I really appreciate it. Danny makes it easier for me to answer more questions from you guys so that I don't have to constantly moderate the stream there. But I do look at the stream some and try to answer specific comments and things whenever I get a chance, but Danny picks the questions for me. So if you don't like the questions that get answered and your question gets skipped, don't blame me. It's Danny Nixon's fault. It's all Danny. We're going to go ahead and jump right into the show right now. And the first question for today is from Blue Dragon 5. Cap, have you considered taking fan art submissions for the new Superhero Rewind single still format? And I figured we'd probably talk a lot about the new format today and the future of Superhero Rewind. If you've been looking at my Facebook and Twitter and even some stuff on the channel, you might notice that I am, and Patreon especially, you might notice that I'm trying to make Rewind the priority again. And I'm really focused on that. And I don't want to make any promises about how often it's going to come out right now. I am aiming for a particular schedule, but I don't even want to announce it yet because I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. So just know that I am working diligently at the expense of potentially other things that I could be working on, but I'm putting on the back burner so that I can make sure the Rewind starts happening again. I know how much a lot of you folks really like that show, and I hate how behind I've gotten on it, and honestly, I've been kind of gung-ho to work on it again lately, and time got away from me. Iron Man 3 was like 3.5 months later than when I started working on it. I don't know where that time went. Every time I put out a new Rewind, it seems like the folks come out of the woodwork to say, oh, Cap, what happened to you? Thanks for coming back finally and doing Rewind, and nothing happened to me. To me, it's only been a couple of weeks, but it's actually been like 3 months. So I'm kind of trying to change how I think about the whole thing and get just, you know, more focused on that show. And so anyway, we have a new format. If you don't know about this, if you're watching this, you've probably already noticed. You've probably seen the Iron Man 3 review, or at least clicked on it for a second. And we've taken stills out because, as I've been talking about on this live show, I keep getting copyright flags and on just stills and videos with stills, and I can't. I can't monetize a lot of those videos anymore, and or at least more of them keep getting demonetized, and some of them have gotten blocked worldwide, and I need to be able to show you guys those videos. I work really hard on them. I'd like them to be available, of course, and so I'm coming up with new ways to do that, and one of them is posting without stills, and another one, and we'll see how this goes. I'm hoping it might get us a little bit more exposure and let some folks find out about Rewind that maybe aren't looking at YouTube as much. I'm finally making a podcast version available, and people have been asking that forever. I have resisted it because I didn't want to split the view counts up too much, but I more and more am thinking that that might not be as big of a problem as I'm making it out to be, especially if we get some new folks that way, you know, coming in and seeing Rewind. But also, I'm thinking if we post as a if we post Rewind in I'm sorry, I've lost my train of thought. I'm trying to remember what my second point was. But anyway, I digress. I think it's just a good idea to have it in both of those places. Now, I know what it was. Revenue streams. So Geekvolution has become more And as you noticed, I've been pushing Patreon a little bit more lately, and I hope folks aren't irritated about that. But the reason I'm doing that is because that has become the more of our revenue stream than ad monetization. And so I'm trying to really focus on that. I'm trying to really make it worthwhile for folks that are on Patreon. And so if I also have a podcast version and I can, talk about Patreon there and make that more of where our revenue comes from, I don't even have to worry that much about making sure that things are monetized and that we're getting and that we're getting ad revenue from it. So anyway, to actually answer your question, those were all things I wanted to talk about. This gave me an excuse to do that. So to actually answer your question, that's an interesting idea. Letting folks submit their own drawings to put in Rewind. They would have to be at least up to the quality stuff is what Danny Nixon is doing. Danny's doing an incredible job for us. I really like his style. I like the idea of most of the videos being uniform in that style, assuming Danny continues to want to do that with this. I'm not making any expectations. And also just, I hope Danny doesn't mind me mentioning this, but I want to be totally transparent about this. Part of the reason that I'm pushing Patreon more right now and trying to work harder on getting more rewinds out is because I would like to start paying folks a little bit more often that have been mostly working for us on a volunteer basis. Eric, I works for me. I do pay Eric, but I would like to be able to pay him more. And Danny has been doing everything on a pro bono basis, and I would love to be able to pay Danny. And it just has been impossible to do that a lot with the revenue stream we have right now. So it's a full-time job for me, and that's been working out okay, but I want to be able to make it worthwhile for folks that are helping me out as well. So anyway, and I mean because Danny has been regularly making stuff for us. Obviously, if you want to volunteer something and we use it, this is not me coming out and saying I pay people to do things. But I've got some regular folks that it has become almost like a part-time job for them that I would like to be able to help out. Man, I hope that's not too much inside baseball. But if you're wondering where some of the Patreon resources go, that's part of why we need that. So DJ Martinez says Danny deserves it. He absolutely does. Jeffrey Patron, hope the podcast does well. Thanks a lot. Really appreciate that. So I like the idea of doing that, especially if Danny gets too busy and he can't do them all the time. But one idea I have, and I'd love to know to get some feedback from you guys about this. One idea I have is to go back and repost some rewinds in just the audio format with a picture, and those it might be really cool to get some different looks and styles and things from people with their fan art abilities. So I mostly want to do that with things that I'm going to have to repost at some point because I'm not able to monetize them right now. I hesitate doing it with everything because A, you lose the view counts, and B, you lose the comments, and there's some great community stuff that goes on in those videos, and I would hate to lose that. So I probably wouldn't delete those videos. I would probably just post the new one and hope that some folks would click on it that way. And there's not a lot of incentive to do that, except it just popped up in your feed and you noticed it was there. Maybe it's one that you didn't know, so you click on it, or because it's you're not expected to actually look at what's on the screen, and so you would click on that. If you knew about the podcast, there'd be no reason to do that. So I'm a little bit worried that it would be kind of redundant. Something really funny happened last night. I started working on the new podcast thing, and I linked it to my YouTube, and I didn't realize that linking it to YouTube meant that every time you posted a new podcast, it posted in video form on YouTube. And that happened with 2 of them, and I had to take them down because they're already up and there was no reason to have them there, and I didn't want to look like I was milking things or anything. And but I thought it was really interesting, the Ninja Turtles 2014, I'm going backwards and doing them from Iron Man 3 going back, and the one that I put up Ninja Turtles 2014, and it got like 50 views in 10 or 15 minutes. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, are these folks that just didn't know that that was a rewind, or were curious to see what it was? Like, why were people clicking on that video? So I just say that to say you guys are great. So many folks watching things that I wouldn't even expect them to click on. And this is why we continue doing what we do. We are coming up into our 10th year of Geekvolution next year. I don't know if folks are aware of that, but we're coming into the 10th anniversary. And this year is the 10th anniversary of my and my wife's marriage. We have been married for a whole decade, and we're going to take a trip soon. before Sarah gets too pregnant. Sarah delivers at the end of July. We're hoping to take a trip here in a couple of months or less, so that it's more comfortable for Sarah to travel. But anyway, so that's really exciting. So 10th anniversary of our wedding, and then next year is the 10th year anniversary of Geekvolution. I don't know what we're doing yet. I'm hoping to do something really cool for it. I've been forever wanting to do, and I know I'm not getting into questions right now, but this is part of, by the way, what this show is for, is so that I can do updatey things and talk to you guys about things that are going on the channel. I'm thinking about trying to finally, and I don't know if I can pull together the resources by then, the funds for it, but I've always wanted to do a Geekvolution convention or have some kind of like a Geekvolution party or space at an already pre-existing con, and try to get as many people to pop in that possibly could. So but that would take some resources, and it would be difficult to decide where exactly to have it to make it, you know, a central enough location so that a bunch of people can show up. But yeah, so Lunas there, it says anniversary plans for the channel. That's what I'd love to do. I don't know what exactly we'll actually end up doing, and at some point I really want that to happen. I don't know if it will be for the anniversary or not, but we've been kicking that around for a couple of years. AMC Comics, wow, congratulations, time certainly flies. I think I found the channel around 2010. Thanks a bunch for being with us for so long. That's absolutely incredible. Holy says, Cap, have you seen the new Shattered Grid trailer? Yeah, it's really cool, isn't it? So Boom put out a trailer, a live-action trailer starring Jason David Frank that I think is going to confuse a lot of people that don't realize that it's for a comic book thing. Because if you look at the description, it's clear that it's about a comic book event that's happening. And I think the first issue of Shattered Grid just dropped this week. It's 25. It's in a black bag. It looks really cool. I'm probably gonna have to buy two because it's in a black bag, because I'm funny with things that I like that are in black bags. But it's but that started. I haven't got my hands on it yet. I'm into the comic shop, and but I'm excited to read it and talk about it a little bit on the omnibus. And I don't know if I'll get it before the next omnibus, but at least in a couple of weeks. But anyway, but the trailer doesn't say anything about the comics, like actually inside of the trailer. So if anybody clicks on that and doesn't think to look at the description or sees it embedded somewhere, they're gonna have no idea what it is, and they're gonna think that there's this really cool new, like, you know, darker, more adult Power Ranger show. And when I say darker, I don't mean that it looks like, and that the comics are anything like the Power / Ranger thing. I think that's what it was called, that fan film that was this super ultra rated R, really rough and tumble violent Power Rangers thing. It's just, it's more sophisticated. It's more meant for the adults who grew up on Power Rangers. I've talked about this a lot, but that's what the Boom comics are for, and that's what the trailer looks like. And they built a Draken costume, and Jason David Frank has been wanting to somehow play Lord Draken forever. He recently guested on a on this Power Rangers RPG thing on YouTube that's happening, and he's playing Lord Draken there, and then he's in this trailer. It's a really well produced trailer. His name escapes me, the guy who writes the comics directed it, and I think it's possible that eventually with the popularity of the comics, and I don't know how well they're selling, but people seem to be reading it. I hear about Draken a lot. I'd like to think that maybe we can convince Saban eventually to make a second continuity show that's kind of based on this stuff, and or at the very least in the same spirit of it, and maybe make some kind of like Netflix thing or something. Again, I wouldn't want like rated R, insanely violent, you know, mature with a capital M, kind of comics, or mature with a lower M, excuse me, kind of show. But it would be cool to see Power Rangers with more story sophistication, and that embraces more of the absurdity of it at the same time as being able to completely take it seriously, which is what I think the movie last year did not quite manage. Star-Lord, so are you excited for Shazam? I certainly want to be. I'm definitely glad that it's actually getting made. That was one of those that for a long time I was like, I'm not going to believe this until we finally see set photos and trailers and stuff, and we indeed do have set photos. I like Zachary Levi a lot. I think he's a really good pick for it. I think he has the right kind of childlike wonder sensibilities for it, and I just hope that it's fun enough and doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time isn't just a straight up farce. I'm glad that, like I keep saying, DC is allowing some of these things to kind of go their own way and not be too tied into a bunch of other continuity. And that makes me think that there's probably not going to be too much studio overhead. And if somebody has a really good vision for that, it should stand on its own. So if that ends up being a really bad movie, I'd like to think that it's because nobody knew what to do with it before. It was because Warner's held the reins too tightly and had a lot of really counterintuitive ideas about the business of it. Cinematographic, hey, Captain Logan. Oh, and I should also mention that we're going to talk about that Shattered Grid trailer again, me and Eric, on the Omnibus this week. I probably shouldn't have talked that long about it, but I'm really excited about it, and it was super cool looking. So anyway, I didn't say a whole lot about what's actually in it. We'll talk about it. Cinematographic, hey, Captain Logan, regardless of the TMNT 07, do you think Night Watcher would function better as a standalone miniseries? And if so, how would you do it differently without rehashing the same story? I think that's a really cool idea. I would like to see the Night Watcher thing. You might have been the person that mentioned that on the Comic Vault we posted the other day for the 3rd volume of Eastman and Laird. Somebody mentioned Night Watcher. I have been wondering if, and maybe I should write him and see if he's even thought of this, if Tom Waltz might consider doing the Night Watcher thing in his comics. I don't know if he can integrate that idea real well. I don't know if Raphael in that series necessarily makes a whole lot of sense to go off on his own and try to be a vigilante, but it could happen, especially depending on how the Aftermath shakes up with the current arc and what's going on with Splinter seeming to about to be going to war. That was a good sentence. With the Ninja Turtles, he's still running the Foot Clan, and there's a lot of moral ambiguity there. And the Turtles finally just can't take it anymore. His ends justifies the means attitude. I could see maybe with whatever the aftermath of that ends up being, it could make a lot of sense to do Night Watcher there. And yeah, a miniseries is a really cool idea. If you're like comics or I guess it's its own cartoon thing. But I like the idea of a Night Watcher doing kind of the Raphael micro series thing, except it's not micro; it's an actual, full blown 4 or 6 issue miniseries. That's a really neat idea. I think it would be really easy to not just rehash the same story, because we didn't do a ton with it. I mean, it's really cool in that movie. Don't get me wrong, the 07 computer generated animated movie, but it's basically just what is Raphael doing while he Turtles after a bunch of time has passed and they're all splintered and on their own, we could have made the whole movie about that, and we could have done a like street level kind of Frank Miller-esque adventure with Raphael. That's what I would do with it. I don't know what exactly the story would be, but it'd be cool to do kind of a street gang thing with it. Maybe make it a Casey Jones team up thing. It'd be really hard to imagine doing that without Casey Jones. And yeah, no, I love that idea. That would be great. Ultron 32, have you seen the Lego Incredibles trailer? No, that just dropped a couple of hours ago, and or I just found out about it anyway a couple hours ago. Maybe it's older than that. And I knew that it was there, but I have not gotten a chance to watch it yet. So I will do that, and Eric and I will try to mention that on the Omnibus this week. It looked like it was just kind of a little story trailer, so I don't know that it will give us a whole lot, but except just look, it's Incredibles and Lego. But I'm excited about that game. Kelly Jones, Cap, I know you may not watch Supernatural. I've never seen an episode, and I've always meant to look at least the first couple seasons, because I know Ben Edlund was a major producer, if not the showrunner of that show for a while. I don't think that was until season 2. I forget. Vince knew all this stuff at one point. He was watching that show and fell off of it. But anyway, have you heard news of the crossover with Scooby-Doo they're doing? I saw that. Yeah, that's interesting. And it's kind of a fun idea to take something that's never been animated like that and put it in Scooby-Doo. We used to do that with the old Scooby-Doo movies. We did it with, one of my favorite episodes of that was the Mama Cass episode from Mamas and the Papas. And it was always kind of fun and a little bit surreal to see some of those real life figures put into animation. And obviously these would be fictionalized characters, but I don't know what the Supernatural looks like in animation, so that would be a lot of fun. They're getting really creative with all the things that they're blending that with. Although I should note, well, and I guess you have the same thing with the wrestling guys, right? Where you see those in animation, because they've done at least 1 or 2 of those, and I guess they just did one with the Jetsons, and they've been doing all kinds of crazy Hanna-Barbera stuff lately. And Scooby-Doo, but Scooby-Doo, I should mention, in fact, apparently was in a Brave and the Bold episode, and I didn't know about it. I heard about this when Eric and I did our Batmania on the Brave and the Bold Scooby-Doo crossover, and I was like, oh, that's really creative, and apparently they already did that, which is odd because they don't seem in that movie like they've met before. So I just kind of made the assumption that they hadn't, and I didn't look this up, so I'm assuming that the person that told me about it was not lying, but apparently, according to one of our viewers, there was an episode about that. So anyway, the Lunist asks if my wife is having a girl. That's what we're hoping for. We had the ultrasound a couple weeks ago, and we could have known then, and we've opted not to. We thought it would be really fun this time since we actually have a preference to not know if it's a boy or a girl before the baby is born. And so, yes, we do not know. So it very well could be. My mom seems to think that with old wives' tales and things that it probably is a girl, just because of, like, I guess the way Sarah is carrying it or something. But we obviously have no idea, and it's going to be a lot of fun to find out. So it's kind of you have that old stereotype, that old cliche of like everybody freaking out when a baby's born and going, it's a boy or it's a girl, and there's really, we have like modern technology that tells us those things now, and so it's not really a big surprise. You get like greeting cards and things that are like, it's a boy. It's like, yeah, we knew that. But with us this time, because we're being intentionally ignorant about whether it's a boy or a girl, we actually get to do that. So it'll be fun to post on my Facebook and stuff afterwards, and be like, it's a girl or it's a boy. So I have not gotten another message from Danny yet, so I'm just going to keep looking through the comments here until I get more comments from Mr. Danny. He might be having a sandwich. He might be doing something more important. No, that's probably not true. We're probably just having technical difficulties. Oh, here's one. Venom Spider Wookie. Have you ever seen Black Dynamite? Would you do a superhero rewind on it? No, I have not seen Black Dynamite. Somebody sent me that in the mail a long time ago when we used to have a P.O. box, which I still need to open again. I've been trepidatious about it because the stuff piles up and I'm kind of out of space. But we have been getting, this is neither here nor there, but we have been getting a lot of requests to bring that back, and it's been a couple of years since we had, been more than that actually, since we did Mailbag Day. But anyway, that came from Mailbag Day, and I never got around to watching it. But I think that's Michael Jai White, right? Of course, I love him. And I've always thought I've always meant to watch it. I just keep forgetting to do it. It might be on Eric's maybe watch list. That might be why I've been avoiding it. But there is a new movie that he's doing that's in that same vein. That's like a comedy western thing that we were supposed to talk about, and the trailer's hilarious. That we were supposed to talk about in the omnibus last week, and I forgot. So we'll probably bring that up this week. But I will probably watch that in preparation for seeing that movie. AMC Comics. Hey, Cap, would you ever consider rewatching through and or reviewing the 03 Teen Titans series? I would love to hear your thoughts on it, especially since you enjoyed Young Justice Season 1. Yeah, and I still haven't gotten around to finishing Season 2 or even hardly getting into that. Once again, I'm restructuring my priorities, so I'm going to be doing a lot less of watching through a whole season of something before I talk about it on the omnibus, except for like Netflix Marvel shows and things that are a little bit shorter and a little bit things that we want to do something more akin to like a spoiler cast on. But as far as superhero TV shows and older ones, I'm going to start trying to do more season overviews, or season overviews in the first place, because I've never really done one on Superhero Rewind. I did it for the Who Wants to Be a Superhero reality show, and that's the first thing. What a weird thing to start that with. That's the first thing I've done a whole season overview thing with. But I'm going to get away from the top 10 list, and there might be some shows that lend themselves better to top 10 that I don't really want to do season by season or try to watch the whole series or talk about the whole series at once. Like, I don't know how I'm ever going to do 87 Ninja Turtles. I've started trying to do a project on that 2 or 3 times, and it's 10 seasons. It's a lot of episodes. It's really hard to binge. And I don't know if season to season makes sense with that. I don't know that people would really care to see me talk about it that way. I could do it that way. I was going to just watch through all of it and do a top 10, but it's been really hard to work in watching that again because it's just really hard to binge. So Teen Titans I probably wouldn't do until I decided to actually talk about it in the Rewind format, and I'm going to be trying to work in more TV that way. So the goal of the show is still every superhero movie ever made, but I will occasionally work in TV things like I always have because they're interesting to talk about and because it's a great outlet for it, and some of that stuff's really fun to write about, and because I want to make sure that if I mean, this is thinking way ahead, but I'm hesitating here because, again, I don't want to make promises I can't keep. But if I'm able to get back to doing these real often, if we do seasons of television, we've got plenty of good material to deal with forevermore, and we won't get to a place where I've reviewed a lot of the really good stuff or a lot of the really interesting bad stuff, and then there's pretty much just indie movies and direct-to-video, and there's not a lot else left. Like somebody the other day said, well, Cap, if you start prioritizing Rewind again, you're going to run out. And then what are you going to do? And I'm like, well, there's a lot. And I think there's a lot more than a lot of people realize, especially when you count in more underground and independent stuff that still counts, but just isn't a big, blockbuster. And there's a lot of direct-to-video. There's a lot of animated now. There's at least a couple hundred that I haven't talked about. I think it's probably that big. But if I was doing seasons of television, that would give me even more of a giant swath of stuff that I can actually decide to do or not do, depending on just what I feel like doing and what I want to throw at the Rewind selection board to help me pick. So anyway, Teen Titans I've never seen. I don't really know anything about that show besides it was kind of popular and it was not in the Bruce Timm universe, and that was hard to get my mind around when it was out because everything was except for that, it seemed like. And so as far as DC stuff went, but I know some of those characters a little bit better now. I never cared about Teen Titans, and so I am interested to go back to that. So I will hopefully at some point do overview things on that. Perpetual State of Entropy with Venom starting off another shared cinematic universe. Should there be a universe for anti-heroes, characters like Night Watch, Morbius, Black Cat, etc., not to be confused with Night Watcher, which is a different thing that we talked about earlier. Should that be the universe for anti-heroes? That's not a bad idea. I still cringe a little bit at the idea of having a shared Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man in it or without him showing up hardly at all. There was that rumor, I don't know if it's really true, that there's supposed to be a Spider-Man cameo in that. And then the question is, does that make it canon with MCU? It's all sticky and weird. Yeah, I think that would be a good, and I guess I'm sort of just assuming that that's what we're going to get. I mean, like, because the whole Silver and Black thing, Black Cat and Silver Sable, they're also kind of anti-heroes. It seems like that's the direction they're going with that. And I would imagine they'll talk about a Sinister Six thing again, because of course that almost happened by itself. And that would be like another Suicide Squad type thing. It's funny, that was originally supposed to come out the same year Suicide Squad did. We thought we were going to get both of those the same summer. How things have changed. But yeah, I think that would be the smart way for that to carve out its own identity. It's just weird to have anti-heroes in a world that doesn't seem to have superheroes. Now, if you say Spider-Man's there and you just put him in the background and it's all semantical, the shared universe idea is simply, well, the superheroes are there, we're just not focusing on them. I can maybe get behind that. You just got to be careful, just like you do, I guess, with superheroes, to not make them all generic or the same and to be saying all the same things with them. It will be interesting to see if that is viable, though. I do not have big expectations for Venom. Now, I have been batting 1,000 lately, and I mean that in the sarcastic sense, with predictions for the way movies have gone, because there have been a couple things lately that I assumed would bomb that did decent. I didn't expect anything from Pacific Rim. I thought that, and the studio, to be fair, was also worried about it. So, I mean, I felt vindicated at the time, thinking that was going to totally bomb. And it's not doing huge guns, but it's doing okay. And well enough that, I mean, especially because of Chinese numbers and stuff, but it did, 20 something, 27, I think is what I read, opening weekend here. That's way better than I thought it would. That sounds really low. but they're going to more than make their money back with worldwide numbers, and that's a little bit surprising. I mean, keep in mind, Ant-Man only did like 45, I think, and for against its budget and with Marvel's expectations, that was great. So like Pacific Rim, I didn't think would do. I mean, I thought that could be like abysmal. I thought it could be like 15 opening weekend, and then worldwide people didn't care. But so take what I'm saying with a grain of salt. Who knows? But it also didn't open against a whole lot, and it was Black Panther. It was like several weeks into Black Panther, and finally beat it out for #1. And I heard a lot of people really excited about that. Like, yay! Pacific Rim finally beat Black Panther's #1 streak. I'm like, yeah, he did better than I thought it would, but at the same time, something had to eventually. But anyway, I think Venom has a really good chance at bombing or not doing as well as they're hoping it will, just because there's so much superhero this year. At the same time, and I'm sure somebody's going to ask me to talk about this, and we'll talk about this on the Omnibus also, but we're one more lighter with Dark Phoenix getting moved back to 2019. So I guess there's that, but there's a lot of genre and a lot of superhero this year. Ready Player One tomorrow night. I'm going with Eric. I'm kind of excited about it. And I'm looking forward to talking about that on the Omnibus. I think that could be wonderful. From what Eric's told me about the source material, it doesn't sound like a book that I would like. It sounds like an excuse for a whole lot of fan service. And he showed me some things about the prose that kind of make me cringe, but it looks like the film could be better than that material, or at least the way Eric has described the material. I mean, I don't want to say anything about it because I've not actually read it, but it didn't sound appealing to me. But that movie looks like they could actually be telling a story and not just have a bunch of excuses to put things like the Iron Giant and King Kong and the DeLorean on the screen. So anyway, looking forward to talking about that. Noah, oh, hey, Cap, glad to see Superhero Rewind back, and I love the Iron Man 3 review. Thanks a lot, buddy. Really appreciate it. Let's read some more questions. Hamza, hey, Cap, hi. How would you put Norman Osborn into the MCU? This has been coming up a lot lately for some reason. I feel like I've kind of answered this one before, although I don't immediately remember what exactly I said. But I don't know. I don't have any brilliant notions right out the gate. He's got such a sordid history that I could see bringing him in and not making him Green Goblin, or not making him Green Goblin immediately. Sort of like Amazing 2 tried to do, except obviously, you don't kill him off right away, and you don't suggest that he's going to be a head on spindly legs without a body. But I think he could come in and be another villain. We're making him Carnage right now. Like, I could see something like that happening. Do the Red Goblin thing just to shake it up. I mean, I know that's really recent. That's just now happening, but something like that to try to shake people's expectations, because obviously we're avoiding him right away in order to not draw parallels to the other two Spider-Man franchises. And I think Homecoming did a really good job. Maybe it kind of overcompensated a little bit, but I think it did a really good job at getting away from some of those comparisons. But obviously, Norman Osborn is a big deal in Spider-Man, and he's kind of that universe's Lex Luthor, and it does feel kind of weird not to have him, especially now that we have Spider-Man and they have access to those characters. I still don't totally know what access they have versus what Sony has, and if it's totally arbitrary and they both can do whatever they want to with those characters. I really have no idea how all of that works. So I'm just assuming that Marvel is allowed unilaterally to use Norman Osborn. But I guess my answer to that is I don't know, but I'm hoping we get him at some point. And mostly just to appease Dan Torrey, because Dan's got to have his Norman Osborn, and he's gonna just keep crying until he gets that. Visler Turlo, I know you're not reeling into Doctor Who, but did you know about the comics? I have a big book of one story. Yeah, of course. And IDW had the license for a while, and people said that a lot of that stuff wasn't great. And I forget who has the license right now, but I read a couple issues of Tenet there, and it was dynamite. I don't think it's Dynamite that has it. I'm just using that as an adjective. It was dynamite. It was excellent. It was amazing. It was stupendous even. There's this cool story that I read. I've talked about it on the channel about a species that lives as sound that was really fascinating. And I really liked that idea, especially on the comic page. You know, how do you render that without us actually hearing it? And then we get to use our imagination and imagine what that species sounds like when we can just see them in kind of waveforms. It was a really cool idea. So yes, I do know about the comics. Eric and I are going to, and I like the idea of multiple doctors having monthly books. I think that's really cool that they do that. That kind of goes with the kind of radio show thing that they do, where they have different doctors that get their own stories. Eric and I are actually doing a couple of Doctor Who things on the Omnibus this week, believe it or not. One of the $20 Patreon requests was one of those audio dramas called Spare Parts, which is the origin of the Cybermen. And Eric has listened to it. I have not yet, but we're going to be talking about that on Sunday when we record the show. Again, we're recording the show on Sunday. It will be excerpts from it. We'll start posting on Monday, and then the show proper will come out either Monday or Tuesday. But anyway, and we're also doing, I don't even want to mention what it is. There's another Doctor Who related thing that that Eric had me watch. So that's going to be a lot of fun to talk about. Dimitri J. Hi, Dimitri J. I feel like I haven't seen you in a long time. Maybe you've been popping in, and I just don't remember. But Dimitri J is a really long time subscriber. Thanks for being around, buddy. It's really great to hear from you. Have you ever seen Netflix's Series of Unfortunate Events? It's a great show for adults and kids to watch together. I keep meaning to. That's Neil Patrick Harris, who I love, and that's a really fun idea for a role for him. I just keep forgetting to sit down and watch it. In all honesty, I'm so behind on watching stuff just for the sake of watching stuff. So I have not done that yet, so I can't talk about that. Magpie. Hi, Magpie. When do you think we will be getting Fantastic Four in the MCU? I think they will rush it as soon as the deal goes through. And they're still dealing with, I guess this kind of thing takes a long time. They're still dealing with the whole antitrust thing, trying to decide if it's even legal for Disney to buy Fox. I still say that's gonna go through and they'll win it. But as soon as that happens, I imagine I imagine that they'll rush it, that they'll try to get FF in there as soon as possible. If they want to do that at all, they're gonna want to make sure and get their ducks in a row and figure out how exactly they're going to integrate that with Fantastic Four coming so late to the party. And when they got access to Spider-Man, they immediately threw him in. And you might say, well, Spider-Man was this really super popular property, and he already had a lot of, consumer, validity. And Fantastic Four doesn't have that, and a lot of people think that you can't even make a serious Fantastic Four thing that anybody would watch because everybody hates the movies that we've gotten so far, and those apparently prove that it can't be done, even though I think the approaches were just off. I think Kevin Feige and those guys get the Marvel Universe and get what Fantastic Four is, and considering what they did with Spider-Man, there's no doubt in my mind that they know what to do with that. I also think that and I don't know because obviously this is a business, this is a multi-bazillion-dollar business. I don't know if they are this sentimental, but I imagine they might want to try to get, once they have the rights to do it, get Fantastic Four on the screen, if not in their own movie, a reference or one of the characters or all four in somebody's movie before Stan Lee passes away, because Fantastic Four is one of the big beginning things in Marvel, and of course that's the first family, and that's one of the first big superhero teams in comics. They're really important. I mean, they're a laughing stock on the big screen, but not so much in the comics. And I can see them wanting to do that before Stan Lee is no longer with us. Scott McCall, Cap, have you started playing Telltale Batman Season 2? No, I haven't. I'm sorry. I'm behind on stuff. Eric and I still need to finish our playthrough that we're going to post to the channel for Season 1. As you might notice, we have just stretched ourselves too thin on stuff, which is why I'm streamlining and trying to change my priorities a little bit. So I'm not saying that we're not going to post the rest of Telltale Batman. I'm saying that I don't know how long it's going to take us to do that. And we don't want to get to Season 2 until we've done that. So we're going to try to take another stab at it sometime this coming week after the omnibus and see if we can't get a couple of hours knocked out a couple of episodes rather knocked out of that. But I imagine it's probably going to be over before we even get a chance to get started on it. But we will see. I'm very excited about it. I want to ask folks to not spoil things for me. I've had a couple of comments where people have asked me what I thought about particular developments. There's some things having to do with the Joker and some different things and Riddler, and I just don't want to know too much. So it would be great if folks would do me a favor and not tell me about things that happen in Telltale Batman Season 2. Life in Time podcast. Cap, have you been watching Black Lightning or any of the superhero shows? I watched and talked about the pilot, but I've not watched beyond that. There's just not enough time in the day. There's so many of these things now, and for my money, a lot of them are just not of a quality where I can get real invested in them at this point. It's just how I feel about it. I think there's a lot of mediocre storytelling going on, at least where I left off with a lot of those shows. But I'm not even watching the ones I really love. I mean, iZombie was still wonderful when I left it, and I just have not had time to get back to it. So those are going to be things that I'm not watching weekly because I just don't have time to. I did watch the pilot for Krypton, and it's fascinating, and I'm going to talk about it Sunday and on the Omnibus, and I don't want to give anything away too much about how I feel about it right now, but I might give that another episode or two just because, as I said, it's fascinating, but I don't imagine that I'll keep watching that every week unless I just get really, really into it and really invested in it. Supergirl Season 3, I watched a little bit of, and I just have kind of lost interest in that show. I imagine eventually I will take the time with all the CW shows, especially when they're said and done, to watch through them all just for the sake of completion, because I was invested in that universe for as long as I was. But it has lost an internal logic for me, and it's kind of fallen apart. And so if it gets great again, I will do my level best to ignore the fact that I think a lot of it doesn't act like a lot of things are broken and you can't really move forward from that. But it's hard to get excited about it because of some of that stuff that made me feel like either it was just crumbling under the weight of itself, or I felt like my intelligence was being insulted. So, and I know a lot of people think it's weird that Eric and I have continued watching Gotham at all because of all of that. It's a show that got more self-aware and understood what it was, and it's stupid, and it was really clever about some of that stuff, and I didn't feel like it was doing some of the pandering things that I think that a lot of the CW shows do. But we've also kind of dropped off of that too. I mean, we only watched the first 6 episodes of the season, and we started getting kind of bored with it. So, if that was the focus of the channel, if the focus of the channel was more new, because obviously we talk about news some and we review movies when they first come out, but the focus with the more in-depth analysis, and we're pretty in-depth anyway, even in conversation, but as far as the more polished stuff, the really well thought out stuff, when I sit down and really take meticulous notes, it's mostly older stuff, and it's mostly retro stuff. I mean, not just retro, but at least a few years old. And so it's that being the focus of the channel. It's hard to do the Primetime Crisis thing anymore the way we used to, just because there's so much more of those shows now. It has to be kind of the thing we do. And even if it was the only thing we did, I still don't see how I would keep up with all of it. I don't see how I could do every episode every week. There's so many of these shows now with all the X-Men stuff that's going on now, and the CW stuff, and Gotham, and now Krypton and everything. I mean, it would be like 11 or 12, episodes a week sometimes, and there's just not enough time in the day. But that's not to say that I won't eventually get back to some of those and just out of more curiosity, see what's going on. Game Station 3, will all the video game movies for next year's marathon be just the theatrical versions? Will some be the unrated versions? That's a good question. I don't know yet. That is such uncharted territory for me. I don't even know right now which ones have unrated versions and which ones have just have the theatrical version. So it's probably just whatever is most readily available, unless there are things that somebody tells us or Eric knows for sure that the unrated version is more interesting, or there's a lot more material there. So I don't know yet. It's probably going to have a lot to do with what we can get our hands on and what we think the majority of folks have able to get their hands on. So we've been talking a good long time already. Got about 17 minutes left in the program. Once again, I want to thank Danny Nixon for helping me out with the show and sending me all of the questions. Tons of stuff that I'm seeing there that we will not have time to get to, but I'm gonna roll as quickly as I can. Oscar Stavemir, whenever you get the time, would you be open to do an Age of Apocalypse X-Men year series? That's interesting. So when you say Age of Apocalypse, oh, you mean the comic series, like make it like Spawn year or Batman year? I would consider, if we have the time, if we wanted to make it a regular Comic Vault series, sitting down and reading all of it. There are some other things that I would like to do that with if we ever have the time. It's kind of just a matter of committing to it and making sure that we're okay with, and the audience is okay with the fact that that's all we're doing for a while. Because once you do that, you don't really have time to go back to anything else. And so that's why we've been doing a lot of things in volumes, where we kind of go back and forth between a couple of comic series, and something like Age of Apocalypse, because there's so much of it, you'd probably have to kind of drop everything. I mean, that's a lot of why Dan and I quit doing Spider-Man page by page, because there just was not enough time in the day to do that and other vaults, and Dan's in law school and doesn't have time to see me every week anyway. If he ever has that kind of time again, we may consider getting back to page by page, or doing, it's more realistic that we would start doing those a few issues at a time. But yeah, so like Age of Apocalypse is one of the things that, or if I wasn't doing a narrative series like Batman year, but I wanted to do written comic analyses and do it issue to issue, that would be an interesting one to do it with. But I think it would potentially break my brain like Spawn did. I don't think it's as bad as Spawn, but I know there's a lot of incoherent stuff there, and that might be the reason that you were mentioning it. I don't know. Solar Dragon 007. Hey, Cap, have you heard of the German Netflix series Dark? Nope. I have no idea what that is. Ultron32 asks if I've seen any of the new Constantine show. No, I haven't. I've been waiting to hear a word about that, because it's another one of those online animated things, and I kind of assumed that there might not be much to it. Obviously, eventually, because I end up buying everything superhero, I'll get my hands on it, but it was not really a priority. But if people say it's great, I might at least take a look at it. Claudio Myron, speaking of shows, ever finished Spectacular Spider-Man? It's Greg Weisman. Yeah, I know. No, I have not ever gotten back to it. I watched the first season and didn't finish it. And in fact, my son, actually both my sons, have watched the entire thing. They became enamored with that. They fell in love with it when they were on a Spider-Man kick for a while. Maybe it was right after Homecoming came out, I forget. And I have them. I just haven't finished them. I was watching them back when they were streaming somewhere, I think on Netflix. Kelly Jones, I know you enjoy Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, but have you considered any interest in Thundercats? Thundercats? Oh, no, I haven't. I've never watched Thundercats, to be brutally honest with you. I think I saw like an episode when I was a kid. I know Thundercats Ho, and I know what the aesthetic looks like, and I know that it's kind of He-Man looking, and that's all I know about it. My wife saw a couple episodes of that and really liked it. I guess she thinks that's really cool. I don't know anything about Thundercats, so I don't know. I guess I mean, I'll consider anything, but I don't have any immediate plans to talk about that show. Jeffrey Patron, do you think we might see a Hulk trilogy, perhaps a Grey Hulk post Infinity War? No, I don't. I think the Grey Hulk thing is possible somewhere, but the way they've been talking about it is that there's supposed to be a Hulk trilogy kind of in just his character arc going from Ragnarok into Infinity War into a third movie after that. Maybe, and I think maybe that's supposed to be the next Avengers movie, or maybe it's even something else. I'm not sure. But because Feige and those guys are throwing around the term Hulk trilogy as being part of these other movies, no, I don't think, because certainly not. And also, they still don't have distribution rights to make solo Hulk movies, so anything they do with the Hulk has to be in other people's movies. I do still think the Grey Hulk thing is possible. I don't know what exactly you do with that now, but just because it's the thing people have heard of, and that still tends to be what people talk about as the definitive run on that character, the definitive story, and Peter David stuff, I could see them doing that. Einstein Jet, would Disney's Bolt qualify as a superhero movie for Rewind? Yeah, that's a good question. I've never seen that movie, but I know it's about a dog that plays a superhero on TV or something, but isn't actually a superhero, but then goes on a superhero-like adventure. So I would have to watch it before I decided if it counts. And it might be one of those things that because it's so superhero-related, I could still get away with talking about it on Rewind and discussing superhero tropes and ideas and things, and motifs, which I've done with a couple things here and there. I sort of got away with even doing Sin City on Superhero Rewind, and that's certainly not a superhero movie, but it's influenced enough by the superhero tropes as a comic book thing that I felt like it made sense at the time to do that. Looking back on it now, I don't know why I did that, but there is sort of precedent before for me to tackle superhero things, or things that aren't really superhero movies, but in the but through the lens of superhero notions. So possibly Professor Zoom 21. Hi, Cap. Hi. Your thoughts on the 2012 TMNT TV show? I like it more and more as I watch it, and I want to go through it front to back, cover to cover. We saw the finale and liked it a lot. We looked at the first 87 crossover, and that was kind of fun, but what they did with it at the end was a lot better. And I never thought I would care for the aesthetic and the style of that show, but it's pretty cool ultimately. I really like the way it blends this more kind of kiddie look, the 87 stuff, with a more traditional comic book TMNT thing. It's really cool when they get them in shadow, and they do some really stylistic stuff in that show. The way it bounces back and forth between 3D and 2D is really neat, and they tell real stories in that show. It's a wonderful show for children because it's not just a bunch of silly stuff that happens, but it's also not dark and relentless. They kind of split the middle in pretty well. Like, it looks like a show that adults wouldn't want to watch, and it's not the 03 series in sophistication, sophistication certainly, but they tell real stories in that show, and it can be a little bit formulaic. It can be a little bit this is the moral of the story, but some of those morality tales are pretty well handled, and I like their characterizations for each of the turtles. I think it's a pretty good, solid show, what I've seen of it, and has a really good sense of continuity. And I think didn't fall apart and run away with itself like 03 ultimately did. Excuse me, with the Turtles in Time stuff, with Fast Forward and stuff. But anyway, Wanderer, because he is the Wanderer. Cap, what is your experience with video game adaptations of books and novels? Video game adaptations of books and novels. I guess I don't immediately, I can't even think of a good example. You mean like books and novels that take a video game? And yeah, I know that those are around, but I just haven't read any. No, for a minute I thought you meant the other way. Yeah, I haven't read any adaptations of video games. Back in the day, I almost picked up the Rise of Sin Tzu one from Batman, and then I realized that it was all written in the present tense, and I just could not deal with that. So I left it well enough alone. Danny Nixon! I'm sorry, Danny Nixon is sending me things. Excuse me. Good old gamer. Did you ever watch PBS shows as a kid? Would you like to see Captain Kangaroo, 3-2-1 Contact, and those kinds of shows for kids return? I think there is maybe a dearth of really good educational stuff for kids, and just like really clever, creative things that don't talk down to kids. But I hesitate saying that because I'm not in the know and looking at them really hard. Obviously, I have kids, but we don't pay for regular cable, and a lot of what they watch is stuff that's streaming. And my kids go to a lot of old stuff like Mr. Rogers and things like that. They're watching Dinosaur Train. That looks like kind of a cool show. I haven't looked at much of it. My wife's watched it with them. That strikes me as, what little I've seen of it, as kind of a Magic School Bus kind of thing. But yeah, I did watch a lot of PBS when I was a kid, although not the shows that you're talking about. Kind of just the big ones that everybody always talks about and knows, like Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers. But I don't know that we need a big return of old shows. I think it would be, like with everything, I think it would be nice to see some new original IPs pop up and you just let some folks be creative and throw some new ideas out. AMC Comics, what are your opinions on introducing original characters in comic book-based properties, and when do you think it is appropriate to bring them into comics? That's a great question. I go back and forth on this, mostly because I have to fight Eric and some of my other comic book fan cronies and people that have worked on the channel before, contributors. I tend to. So Eric just has this real like no, like never do that policy, no tolerance. Where he's like, well, there are so many characters in the comics that anybody, that if you make up a new character, you should see who's close in the comics and at least give them that name, or just make it somebody that's in the comics. I share that opinion personally. It's irritating when you have a lot of generic, like kind of nothing characters when you could have brought in somebody from the comics, but then it sucks when you have kind of poor writing and two-dimensional characters that are people from the comics that we didn't really do justice to them in film or television or whatever it is we're talking about. So I tend to just want it to be good, and I'm not, if I am enamored with a character and I fall in love with it, and then I go and look at the comics and go look it up and they're not in the comics anywhere, I'm not gonna. How dare you make up your own character? Eric seems to think, he's not here to defend himself. Eric seems to think that that's kind of disrespectful to the material. I think that each version of these things should kind of stand on their own, and it's with something like MCU, for instance, we're building this new universe and it's its own living and breathing world. And it kind of makes sense to me that, especially after that's been around for a while, and since we're not just straight up exactly adapting comics, since we are creating something new out of something old, that naturally new people would just arise and come out of that. Also, some of the best characters that we have in comics now are people that are characters that were first invented in other media. So if you say you should never do this, then you don't get characters like Harley Quinn. Of course, Eric, I think, wouldn't mind that. Eric's not the biggest Harley Quinn fan, but there are, you wouldn't have Mercy from Superman the Animated Series, and those guys earned it because they were so reverent to the source material and loved that stuff, and they created things that were really in step with that world. And if we want new characters in comics, I don't really understand the logic of let's never create anything new in the adaptation, because the adaptation isn't just there to deliver it to the masses. It is often to tell brand new stories. Now, if that's the purpose, you always have to think about intent and purpose. If that is the purpose, if it's just let's make it exactly what it was in the comics as well as we can in making a good adaptation to screen, because things are different on the screen than they are in comics. Your medium can change things. Then it kind of doesn't make sense to me that in that case you would invent new characters, certainly. But if it's already something new anyway, you might as well. Like we invented a new, I can't remember her name now, but a new angel character for Spawn season 3 on HBO, if memory serves, and she was really interesting. And I was glad that we weren't just tied to what we had in the comics. When should we bring them over? I guess it's just a case-by-case thing where it kind of depends on what's done with them. Like, I can't answer that question until I see it. So if Harley Quinn had been handled atrociously, it would be really easy to say, in the first place, it would be really easy to say, well, see, that's a character that should not be adapted. But I think you kind of need an example first, and even then, I just have a you can make anything work mentality about this kind of thing. So that's what I'm really getting at. This is too long-winded. I could have just led with that, really, because you can have a really awful adaptation. Like, we tried to bring Coulson into MCU, nothing really came from. Excuse me, into 616. Comics, nothing really came from that. Nobody cares about that character in the comics, but it could have been great. So even if somebody is brought in and it's done really poorly, that doesn't mean that it can only be done poorly just because you have one anecdotal example of it. So I don't know. I'm very open-minded to things like that. Blue Dragon 5. What event in the MCU would you love to see a Marvel What If of? That's interesting. I do want to see a What If film at some point. I think that would be really cool to really expand the different dimensions and do the whole Marvel multiverse thing. We are almost out of time. So what would be the event? I'm sure we're going to say Infinity War after we see Infinity War, right? Like that will probably end up being the thing. But I don't know. You could do cool things with Civil War. I guess right now, I mean, we have had a lot of movies already, but I don't know that there's even at this moment enough of it for me to go like, wouldn't it be really fascinating to see this thing totally turn on its head? I'm trying to think. Like, I guess Age of Ultron, because Vision could have turned out way different. That could have been a totally different kind of thing. And Age of Ultron, I think that is my answer, because it would be interesting if Age of Ultron hadn't ended on such a happy, on as happy a note as it did, and if more people died and stuff. So a more not post-apocalyptic but closer to post-apocalyptic kind of ending for that movie. I think that could be interesting. Magpie wants to know if I'm getting a lot of entries for who reviews the reviewers. Yeah, I'm hearing from people who are saying they're making videos. So we've gotten a couple, including yours, but I don't know who else is. But I've only gotten a couple so far. But we still have about a week and a half left. So I'm going to announce that this week that the deadline is coming up. It is, I believe, I don't want to say it right now because I don't have it in front of me, but it's in the second week of April. I think it's that Tuesday. But I will mention it again on the Omnibus this week. And go to the video where we announced it for details about that. And you can send us your 5-minute video at Facebook or as a link to an unlisted YouTube video, and you have to do it that way. I've had a couple people that have tried to send me videos directly. I have to be able to give them to the judges, so they need to be it needs to be an unlisted video link. And if you don't know what we're talking about, I'm bringing back our old competitive. It was a competitive reality show. Now it's more of just an ongoing contest. Called Who Reviews the Reviewers. We're doing the 5th season. And the way it's working this time is each round we open it up to everybody, and we pick our favorite 3, the 3 we think are the best. We deliberate about those. And then whoever has the best video with there's just 3 judges now. The first week it's going to be me and Eric and Aaron Dicer. And then we'll have some other guest judges down the road. But Aaron's going to come in with us probably frequently, and then what we'll do is the winner for that, the top banana for that, will go into a final round with 5 others after 5 more rounds have happened, and then the winner for that for that challenge will get a cash prize. And so you'll only have the commitment of at max 2 videos. Which I think will be really nice for folks. And also, I haven't announced this yet, but we're going to make it the winner of each round. We're going to allow to make another review if they want to put in the Omnibus. So we're going to give them their own little segment in the Omnibus for a week as a prize for more exposure for winning that round. So that's the plan there. And the first challenge is to pick a movie from the year you were born and that you've never seen before, or at least that you haven't seen until you watch it for this. And review that. Anthony Casero, we'll do a couple more. What's the difference between having a show be repetitive like Arrow, where they repeat storylines and lessons, and having a show mirror real life, where people have to relearn some lessons? It's believability, right? It's internal logic. It's buying that it's not a crutch the show is using to make a regular, frequent episodic television. And that can be sometimes, I guess, a difficult thing to articulate, but I feel like it's pretty easy to see to tell that when you see it. When you have a character that is just stagnant, like keeps learning the same lesson every episode, but then the next episode we've reset them. I think that's different from, oh, I've lost myself. I think if a character is clearly evolving, because everybody has setbacks. Everybody falls back. Everybody has these times in their life where they have to find themselves again. Like I talked about with Tony Stark and Iron Man 3. That's not the same thing as character regression. That's not the same thing as, well, we're just out of ideas, and we always make these shows about should I kill or should I not. So once somebody like Green Arrow has learned that lesson, we'll just have him learn it again because we don't really know what else to do with him. And sometimes in that show, I felt that way, and I felt like it could have been handled well, where he could have dealt with this again because he now had a really good reason to maybe fall back. But I'm not understanding the man of the moment. He doesn't seem like a real flesh and blood human being to me. It seems like we're just forcing drama, and that we're writing kind of scene to scene, and he's not. And like, I'm not trying to review this show again because I haven't seen it in a while and I don't know what we're doing with him right now. But that was just my feelings about it the last time I saw it. So I'm just using that as an example. Aaron Hickman, hi Aaron. Which superpower would you have if you could have one? I would make my days a lot longer. That would be my superpower. I would make it so that and somehow, or rather, like, not a stopping time thing where like time stops around me and then I have time to do more things. Just this relative thing. I don't even know how it would work. Just this relative thing where I get like 98 hours in a day, but still only need like 6 or 8 hours sleep. But everybody else just has 24. Or maybe I can just increase it for everybody, somehow. And then, but I guess you could just say, well, what you really want is immortality. What you really want is just to be able to make your life a lot longer. So maybe that's it. Aaron is one of the co-hosts for the Genesis Gems podcast, which is one of my absolute favorite podcasts. I had those guys on, him and Nick, a while back, chatting about the Sega Genesis at large, and they are going to have me, quick plug, on their Patreon show, which we're supposed to be recording this weekend, but once that goes up, I'll let everybody know about it. They do a Patreon show where they cover video games that are Sega, but not Genesis. And they're doing Virtua Fighter, which is my favorite fighting game of all time, or at least my favorite fighting franchise of all time. We're doing the first one, which was on 32X, and there's a couple versions on the Sega Saturn, and of course, it started as an arcade game, and we're going to be chatting about all those different versions, and I'm super excited about it. It is a Patreon exclusive show, so you do have to become a patron with them, but it's only $1 a month. And you could, if you wanted to do that, just to listen to that, you could jump in and contribute for a month and then jump back out. But I really encourage you to do that and to support those guys. I love what they do, and I want to try to help them out and get more people listening to them because they make wonderful content, and everybody should be listening to them. So anyway, let's do one more. Mario 500 now. Captain, would you consider making videos related to TV programs, either based on certain characters in video games and or video games in general? Consider making videos related to TV programs based on characters in video games. I guess I don't fully understand this question. Are you talking about like Sonic and Mario and just in Zelda and characters that have gotten like cartoon shows and things like that? Yeah, I don't know. It's not that's not really immediately like a priority. Like something that's on my radar. Obviously, and I don't mean to just keep plugging this, but whenever there's something that I don't do regularly that you'd really like to see me at least sample and weigh in on a little bit, we do the $20 donation on Patreon, and I will tackle pretty much anything you'd like me to look at. But as far as making a bunch of regular series on more things, I just don't have enough time in my day, and I can't even keep up with the things that I've already started. And so that's why I'm really trying to overhaul and streamline some things. I do want to talk a little bit about Canon Crypto Freaks, because with putting Rewind back in the forefront, that is looking less and less likely that I'm going to be able to finish it in the form that it's in, which I really hate. I mean, I keep trying to make that happen. And I'm still not saying for sure that I won't do it that way, but I'm considering other possibilities. People for a long time have said, well, why don't you just do season overviews? And I haven't wanted to do that because I tend to have a lot to say about that show episode to episode. But I'm considering making that compromise and bringing it to Superhero Rewind and finishing it that way as season overviews like I'm doing with some other things. I might still leave the counts in. I don't know yet. But if I did that, I would go back and do the first season again, probably, and then try to finish the whole series. But obviously that would take some time, but it wouldn't take as long as trying to do every single episode, which I kind of feel like I would have to drop a lot of other things I'm doing in order to finish, and I just don't think there's enough interest in it. It gets watched. There's a really loving group of people that watch that show, and I'm grateful for the interest that's there for it. But it's not like Rewind, and I feel like if I did Smallville on Rewind, more people would find it, and more people would want to listen to me talk about it. But I also love that format, so I'm still kind of kicking that around and jumping back and forth on it, and I'm happy to take suggestions about what maybe I could do with that. But anyway, I think that's going to be it for me this week. Thanks a lot for watching. Sure appreciate it. I think we tackled quite a bit of stuff, and got lots more stuff coming for you this week. I'm going to be posting later today an old Rewind that we've never had all of it together in one video. I'm going to put up Watchmen is one video finally, so that's going to happen this afternoon. And I've got more excerpts from the last omnibus that I've still got to post this week. And like I said, I'm working diligently on a brand new Rewind, and that will come out in the not too distant future. And have fun trying to figure out what that is. I gave some clues from last time. I'm going to start doing that instead of coming right out and telling you what I'm going to do. Sometimes I'll probably do that, but sometimes I think it's kind of fun to guess. So nobody's figured it out yet. So it'll be fun for you guys finally to see what it is. I think you'll be excited about it. But anyway, thanks again, folks. Sure appreciate it. I'm Captain Logan, and I'll see you again next week. Same Cap time, same Cap channel.